Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Fuck the Plan, the ADHD Project podcast. My name is Aaron, and this is my co-star Cass. Say hi.
Hey.
And so, what we're here to do is, firstly, I'm going to kind of read you our mission. This podcast came about because both Cass and I kind of left career paths or things that we were doing that might have been more lucrative, but weren't really exactly what we wanted to do with our lives. And both Cass and I have ADHD. I founded the ADHD Project in order to help others who have ADHD learn not only this, but how to manage it and have an easier time managing it day to day. So we really want to get the message out there that we truly believe that those with ADHD are not meant to follow the norm or the typical path all the time. I really believe that we're meant to live outside the box and for so much more than what a typical 9 to 5 type job would offer. And 9 to 5 is great for a lot of people. But at the same time, our minds are kind of uniquely tailored for paths that a lot of people aren't really built for in a way or aren't willing to walk. And I want this show, to show people with ADHD how to live their lives authentically and intentionally the way that you want to live them. We're going to help you realize that this is how life, I think, is supposed to be for us, choosing what and when you want to do. And my goal really is to change the way that the ADHD community as a whole views their role in their own lives and how they live their own lives. Because I think you should stop trying to do your best at working in the system and you should think about how you could use the system to your advantage. Use your strengths against and around the system, working it to your advantage. And above all, I want people with ADHD to realize that it's ultimately your responsibility to craft a life that you love living and that you are in control of that a lot more about than you think. So not to, I've talked a lot at this point, probably. I feel like I talk a lot. So I'm going to let Cass take the reins for a minute here. And, this is our first episode. So we just kind of want you to know a little bit more about who we are, how we got to this point, and what we're all about. So, Cass, if you want to kind of tell us a little bit about, how you got to the point where you are in your life, where you might have, left a job that could have been more lucrative. And now you're doing something that you care about more.
So, I didn't go to college.
Me neither.
Yeah. Ayo.
Yeah,
Congrats.
we used to work
Fist
together
bump.
for what it's worth. So everybody knows Cass and I used to work at the same regional bank together.
Yes. In the investment department
Right.
specifically. So even more soul sucking. Without going to college, my options were fairly limited. I worked at a gas station for a little while, and a friend of mine working at that bank basically said, "We need people on the team. You want to jump over, you'll make a lot more money." He was correct. I jumped over. They wanted me to take these investment tests. Anybody in the world will recognize the terms Series 7, Series 63, Series 66,
You had
and
to take
life
all
and
these
health
exams.
insurance. And I apologize if you got flashbacks. Anybody who is in the industry. Yeah. So we took those tests, both of us. There was a shortage of people who were passing the tests. So they kind of streamlined us in this investment career. And I never planned on staying there. I was 19 years old when I got these licenses. And then all of a sudden, almost 10 years had gone by and I was still there. I had gone through different career changes within that organization. I had done administrative assistant work. I had been a financial advisor. And I hated it. And even though I met some great people through it, Aaron being one of them, it wasn't quite worth my soul or whatever is left of it after almost 10 years there. I eventually got fired. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it took them as long as it did to do it. No hard feelings. I completely deserved it.
Right.
It was just really hard to phone in caring about something that is so antithetical to who you are.
Yeah.
We're both very much creative types. I am an actor. I'm a writer. I'm a musician. And it doesn't quite lend itself naturally to the very logical, cerebral work of investing
Yeah.
or the kind of disingenuous socialization of sales.
Yeah.
And So when I got fired, it was truly because I had so stopped caring. I was bringing my Nintendo Switch into work and playing Skyrim at my desk, and I would just leave the campus for
Yeah.
like 3 hours and be like, "Oh man, I've got some messages. Huh? Probably can answer
And
those."
and while that sounds fun, I bet there was a lot of, like, anxiety going on at
It
the time.
was it was actually more stressful doing that. And I have always said if I put the work into the actual work that I put in into making it look like I was working, I would have been making 6 figures.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Which is important to understand that just because we worked in the investment industry does not mean we made tons of money,
No.
because you have to actually be good at it.
I always say, and I think it goes for you too, for D&D players out there. It's like I kept I kept finding myself in really awful situations that I should have died from, but I just kept rolling nat 20s on charisma checks and they just kept me around for some reason. But so once I got fired, it was very much bro, that's fair. And I walked away. This was March of last year, so basically exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
Um Through that time, I didn't really know what to do. I was 27 going on 28, and it was scary, but I took the unemployment for the 6 months it was granted. For the government watching, I will say that I looked for a job every single week,
Oh,
3 times
yes.
a week. I was very much dedicated to that. Anyway, I went on
Just
a
just tell Uncle Sam so he knows.
yes,
So
he
he
knows,
knows.
he knows. Anyway, I went on like a pirate themed road trip with my dog. I did a bunch of theater. I went skydiving. I did all of the stuff that I really wanted to do. And it made me realize by the end of that summer, I could not go back into that industry.
Yeah.
The idea of doing that, even though I would keep making more money than most non-college graduates would make, I just could not stomach the idea.
Yeah.
Um, I was dating my now fiance, Hala,
Hmm.
and he's a dedicated actor who like has about 10 different side hustles to try and make it through, and I was
Right.
really inspired by that. That's kind of the life I'm living now. I wrote a play that's going to New York City this year, and I'm currently playing my dream role of Maureen in Rent.
Which is awesome.
And I'm doing a bunch of different side hustles, delivering for Amazon,
Yeah.
playing Wonder Woman at kids' parties. And every day is different and unpredictable. And my schedule is, oh
Ridiculous.
my Lord.
I've seen your
Um,
schedule. I know it's
it's
ridiculous.
insane. But even with myself being that busy making a fraction what I was making before,
Yeah.
I feel way more in control of my
Right.
life and way happier.
Exactly. And we'll put a pin there for a moment because I want to talk a little bit more about how we're enjoying our lives now in a
Mm,
moment. But just to tell a little bit of my story as well. So a lot of you hopefully recognize me from the ADHD Project. I've been working on kind of growing this business as an organization that helps people with ADHD learn how to manage their lives better and learn how to lead a life they love living. Because it's easy to say that, but it's not quite as easy to really understand what it means or put it into practice. So I too was working at the same company as Cassidy did. And I found myself over the years, I would spend a year in a job or a year and a half in a job and, in like one role at the company. And it would get to the point where I felt like there was something more, I needed to do something a little bit better or a little bit more. And it wasn't always about the money, though the money didn't hurt. You know what I mean?
it's why we stayed as
It's,
long as
it's
we
why we
did.
stayed as long as we did. And I mean, just to put it out there, I never made more than I don't think I ever made six figures in the investment industry, but we made good money. It was enough to where we could save and we could, uh, put money aside for the future. But at the same time, I would always feel like there's things that are missing. I liked the part of my job where I helped people. I was a financial advisor for a long time, and I got kind of tired of telling people like, "Hey, you did a really great job. You saved your whole life. You did your 401k. You've got 500,000. You've got $500,000, and you're gonna have to wait until you're 76 to retire. And I can get you maybe $400 a month. Good luck."
Oh
You know,
yeah.
like you have to sit there day after day and tell these people like, good job for doing everything right. Still doesn't matter. You still can't retire.
Little anecdote, we had this software,
Yeah.
this financial planning software, and you know where I'm going with this.
I do.
And it would generate like a score that they defined as the likelihood of
Success.
success
Yeah, like
in achieving their retirement goal.
how likely you were to be able to live until you die without running out of money.
Yep, given the age they want to
Yeah.
retire. And more often than not, even the wealthier clients of ours would get like 20% or below.
Yeah.
And some people would get 0%. And when
0%.
they got zero, underneath the little meter, it would say, "Is zero a good score? Find out."
Find out here why.
I don't think you need licenses
Yeah.
to understand that zero is
Not
not
a good score.
it's just
Yeah,
not. It might be the
like
worst you could get.
so like I look at this situation and I'm like, I can't keep doing this, you know? And at a certain point, I realized that I'm spending a lot more time helping other advisors learn how to use the systems, the programs, and things like that. So I move into a job where, you know, on paper it sounds really good. I'm going to be managing a team of people that help the other financial advisors with using these kinds of things, with their paperwork, with the processes, because there's a lot. We worked in operations for a lot of the time, and there's a lot of paperwork when it comes to investments. So you know, I move into this job, and then very quickly you kind of realize that, you know, just because you become a manager or you have a team to run or whatever, you know, things don't just kind of start to be smooth sailing. You know, everybody feels like the higher up in the food chain you go, the less work you do, but really now you just get to the point where you have to manage up as well as you manage down. Like, you know, I would have these same disappointing conversations where I would have people who are looking up to me as their manager, who are counting on me to help them with things. And I have to be like, yeah, great. Your raise is going to be like $400 this year. Have a good day. You know, like you'd have to tell people these really terrible things. And it just didn't change, you know? And yeah, I was making more money and that was cool. And, you know, I was on salary. I had a little bit of freedom with my schedule. But at the same time, I was miserable and I was stressed out from not even just 9 to 5. It was from the second I woke up until bedtime. I was on vacation and I would be getting calls from my boss, and rightfully so, because there was so many things that I had on my plate to do that I couldn't keep up with them all, you know?
Right.
And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, this isn't going to work long term. And, you know, I ended up, a lot of things went down, but I ended up ultimately making the decision to leave. And I took a job at a different company for considerably less money. And also considerably less bullshit is the best way I could talk about it, because at the same time, the beginning of that year is when I started the ADHD project. I had been looking for, you know, a way to start a business on my own, maybe as a side project. And then I kind of found that, you know, I really just wanted to pursue helping people, specifically other people with ADHD. And I didn't really know that it was going to turn into what it is now when I started, but we eventually created the ADHD Project Planner and multiple different, um, you know, methods and strategies and things that we've figured out and been able to help teach people to manage their ADHD better. And I realized that that's what I wanted to be doing. You know, so I took my severance time or whatever. I think I took 6 weeks to really not have a job and just really hammer onto the ADHD project, and kind of had a big growth spurt at the middle of the year last year, and then continued in through the holidays. And, you know, just realizing that now my goal is kind of get to the point where I can make that my full-time job and I don't necessarily need to have, you know, a day job anymore. But, you know, the point I'm getting at here is we've both kind of made these long journeys to come full circle and live lives that we're more happy with, even though we might not make the same amount of money. You might not have, you know, status, which I think is arbitrary at this point.
Yeah.
You know, a lot, we've kind of gone away from that path that you think is what's best for you, because people don't understand that what's best for you doesn't really just exist on paper as like a high salary, you know?
Right. And when you were talking about status, that's something, you know, especially earlier on, like the younger I was, the more impressive it was in like a Doogie Howser kind of fashion. But, you know, when people would ask, there's a problem, especially in this country, where in order to get to know somebody new, we ask what their job is,
Right.
as if that's indicative of who they
What do you do?
actually
Yeah.
are.
Hi, how are you? What do you do for a living?
And it's not.
Yeah.
It's a horrible way to get to know people,
Right.
especially younger people like us who have inherited a market that is less than kind,
Yeah.
especially to the creative types.
Yes.
And when people would ask that, I would like look down at my shoes and be like, I'm a financial advisor.
I know, it's like, it's not something you're proud of, like, you
And they're
think it
like,
would be.
yeah, they think it's so impressive. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, you must be so smart. That's great. And I'm like, this,
Yeah.
this
There was a
doesn't,
point where I had left the company we both worked at, and I was working at a different company, and I hated it so much that within 8 months, I went back, and I would be sheepish, the same thing. "What company do you work for?" Like, you wouldn't really wanna
redacted.
say, whereas,
Uh,
like, some people are like, they wanna wear a shirt, or a badge or something that says, "I work for this," or "I do that," or like, "I'm in wealth management." Like, I see people whose license plates are like eye doctor. It's like, all right, that's cool and all, but you really need that on your license plate. Like, we know you, all right,
yes.
you drive an ugly Mercedes. Of course you're an eye doctor. What else would you be?
Tesla now.
Oh yeah, that's
Uh,
true. But I mean, the thing is, at this point, even though we don't make as much money, even though our schedules are hectic, I practically work 2 jobs. I don't even know how many jobs you have at this point. 17 jobs.
I
Like,
don't even know either.
we love our lives a lot more, and I like what I am doing better because I know that I'm working towards something that I actually care about. And being able to say that you care about something like that, to me, is the huge thing. So
Yeah.
like, I don't know about you, but I definitely feel like at this point in my life, I'm working towards what I would call my life's work. I'm not just working my life away. I'm doing something that has meaning and value to me with trying to get the ADHD project up to a point where it can affect more and more and more people.
Yes, and in my opinion, being unemployed for a while in a society that really, uses your job as a measure of your value, which I hope the people who are listening to this strictly from audio, I did put air quotes on that. Um, it it makes you really reevaluate a
Yeah,
lot,
it does.
and your definition of success. I think everybody has a very different
Yeah,
definition of success, and we shouldn't just take the umbrella term. Oh, success. You're in a lucrative job. You get married. You do this. You do that. That's not what success looks
yeah,
like. And in this life, where we all have different philosophies about meaning or lack thereof, you need to work on defining what that means to you.
yeah.
And in my opinion, success isn't how big your name gets. Yeah, is being famous cool?
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't know,
I
but
bet
I
it
bet
has
it
its
is.
perks. I bet it has its
I bet
perks.
it has a lot of perks, yeah. But that's not what it's all about for
Yeah,
me. It's about being able to wake up and feel excited
yeah,
about waking up. It's about not having that gnawing feeling I used to have on a Monday night of, oh God, I got to do it all again tomorrow.
yeah.
It's being excited to be alive
Yes.
is what my metric of success
Yeah.
is. And
It's
I
like
can say
loving your life.
I can finally say that I've reached and am continuing to reach a higher level of that. But I don't want to brush over the fact that, yes, the budgeting,
It's difficult.
I'm not going to pretend that that stress doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It really does. Like, it's not that it solves your financial problems. Like, you still have to figure out a way to
Create
make
some.
money. It creates some in some cases. It's like, I'm very, very thankful to anybody who has supported the ADHD project financially because it has really helped cover the gap between what I was making before and the pay cut that I took. And again, we're not talking like ridiculous amounts of money. We're talking like under $100,000 a year from an income perspective, which at this point, you kind of have to get closer to that to have like some of the things that used to be considered signs of a successful life. But if you define your successful life as loving your life or leading a life that you love living every day, you wake up and you're not miserable to live your life, or even if there are things that are making you miserable, feeling like it's worth it. So it's kind of a good segue. One of my favorite examples that I like to use, to give you a little bit of backstory, I just got married back in September. My wife,
Woo!
thank you, and congrats on your upcoming marriage.
Yeah.
So my wife, she was a dancer throughout a lot of her school career and did ballet, and she's very cute. She's going to start doing ballet classes again soon to
You
get
two
back
in
to it.
general are very cute.
Thank you. So essentially, we've gone to the ballet a couple of times, which I had seen when I was younger, but never paid that much attention. So recently, we were at the Nutcracker over the holidays, and I noticed that a lot of the leads and a lot of the dancers in the Nutcracker were guys. And I thought about, the kind of life it takes to not only be a male ballet dancer, but to be an adult professional ballet dancer as a guy. And I don't care about gender stereotypes, whatever. I fully support that. But what I'm getting at here is if you're that good that you are a professional ballet dancer as a living, you have to have started when you were as a like
Oh yeah,
you don't just like graduate college and then go decide to get a job as a ballet
it's
dancer.
a
Like this has been your
lifestyle,
whole life.
and their bodies are conditioned for
Exactly.
it.
It's like it's more than some pro athletes, depending on the sport that you play. So this guy, I don't care what his orientation or his presentation or anything is, from a childhood age, his entire life he has had to deal with bullshit, basically. I'm sure there's been pushback from potentially families saying, oh, boys can't be ballet dancers, or they're pushing these harmful stereotypes onto this kid. And then if you can make it through your family looking down at you, then you have to deal with bullies. Think about going through middle school, high school, college, even as a ballet dancer, as a dude. By the way, as a dude who is ripped and in the best shape, and like other dudes are going to come up to this guy, like wanting to be friends with him at the gym. And, you're going to ask him his profession, and he might look down for a minute. And like the point I'm getting at is that for 20, 30 years of this guy's life, every single day he has been probably told in some way or another, like, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You shouldn't be a ballet dancer. Guys don't do that. Boys don't do that. But then where do you think all of these professionals come from? So the point I'm getting at here is that it's not by accident that that guy is a professional ballet dancer for a living. His entire life, he has been working against adversity to create a life that he loves living because he cares that much about his craft that he does, that he is willing to put up with an entire lifetime of people looking down their noses at him to do what he feels he needs to do for himself as his passion. And I know that it's difficult for women out there too. I am the last person who would discount that. But this is just one specific example where this guy might have had the most adversity to overcome on the way to his job as anybody else that works there. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you definitely love what you do if you deal with all of that. Now, on the flip side of it, my neighbor across the street, my terrible redneck neighbor who's got a truck that's way too loud and turns it on at 6:30 in the morning and parties all night and takes his boats out and makes tons of noise at all hours of the day and is generally oblivious to what everybody else around him is doing. That guy fucking loves his life too. That guy doesn't have a care in the world. And to me, yeah, might one be a little bit more honorable or noble of a way to get in there? Yeah,
One
probably.
might, yes.
But what I'm trying to get at is if he can do it, it's not that hard. You know, you can get to a life that you live. If this dummy that lives across the street and does nothing but terrorize his neighbors for 24 hours a day, except when he's out on his boat terrorizing
I hope
people
he
in the
listens
water,
to this.
I hope he does too. He's probably a nice guy, but like at the same time, like if you can be that oblivious to everything and still find a way to live a life you love living, then anybody can do it.
There's something strangely admirable about
Isn't there?
it.
It's like, does it annoy the shit out of me when like my wife is trying to sleep and this guy is keeping us awake? Yes, it absolutely does. And in that moment, I want to run out there and smash the stereo, but at the same time, I can understand where this dude is just like, you know what? He doesn't have a care in the world right now. He doesn't give a shit that the whole neighborhood is awake right now. This guy loves his life. And so there's a downside to things too. So I think we should all be self-aware at a certain point. But at the same time, that's what I'm getting at is that there's many different ways for this to look. It doesn't necessarily look like trudging your way through an arduous task and reaching a certain milestone in your career. Sometimes, there's people who, make 40 grand a year, have two kids, go on one vacation every year. They work at whatever office building they work at, and they are so happy with their lives. And if that's for you, that's great. But if you are working at a job that you don't like and you have two kids or don't, and you don't want to be doing what you're doing, you have a responsibility to make that change to yourself.
And I've been realizing this lately. I was at that job for so long, well, at that company, with various jobs. And I had genuinely started to believe that I was just lazy.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, my God, my work ethic sucks. And in that job, it did.
Yeah.
But I thought that meant my work ethic in general
Yeah.
sucked. Never mind the fact that I was, making all these moves with my writing and doing all of this
Yeah.
other stuff because we define ourselves by our jobs in this society.
Yeah.
It I felt like I had zero work ethic and I was just typical like
Yeah.
slacker
Isn't it
burnout.
funny how we internalize that? Like your job becomes your identity. And if you can separate that and think of your job as like something you do, it's not your life, it's part of your life. Then you
Mhm.
can start to realize what actually matters to you. And when
Yep.
you focus on things that actually matter to you, you realize that a job is a job is a job. I personally, I love cooking. If it came down to it, I would much rather go and work as a cook, as a line cook. I would work at McDonald's and be happier doing that than take an offer to go back to the job I left.
Yes. And I've been realizing as when I look at my calendar, especially like until April, it's like it is insane the amount of stuff I am doing. And I have gotten people that are like, "Oh my god, I wouldn't be able to do that." Like, "Oh, your energy, man, your work ethic." And I'm like,
Well, you just go
"Do
through
I
it.
have a I have a
Yeah.
I have a good work ethic."
You start to
What?
realize these things about yourself that it's because you weren't
I didn't
connected to
care.
what you were doing.
Yeah.
And that's why, especially for those of us with ADHD, one thing is for sure, we will not do shit that we don't want to do. If you do not really want to do it, it's not happening.
Mm-mm.
So you can either A, try and force yourself to want to do something that you don't, or B, redesign your environment so that way you do want to do and like to do the things that you're doing. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every
I
day
do not.
to work on the ADHD project before I go to my regular job. If you ask me to wake up at 5 in the morning for almost any other reason other than I'm on vacation and I need to go to the airport, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But I'm willing to do that because I feel like the work that I'm doing is important and it's something that I care about. And it's a really good segue, actually. I'm going to show Cassidy on my computer screen here, and I'm going to put this up on the screen for everybody watching on the video. But if you're on audio only, it's a Venn diagram with four circles, and I'll put a link, I'm sure, in the description. This is our first episode. I'm pretty sure that's possible. So we'll put
Yeah,
a
probably.
link in the
It's
description.
2024. It's possible.
So there's this concept in Japanese culture, and I love almost everything about Japanese culture. From the food to like the way that they live their lives and things like
The
that.
insane mascots that represent cities.
Yeah, which is fantastic. It's one of the coolest things ever. It's one of my dreams to go there. But they have a concept called ikigai, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. But the top circle is what you love, and then the bottom circle is what you can be paid for. The right circle is what the world needs, and then the left circle is what you are good at. So it's these four components of your life, basically: what you love, what you are good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And the idea is to have all four of these things in harmony if you can. And if you achieve that, that's what's called ikigai. It's like a way of living. So like what you love and what you are good at, if those two things are the same, that might be your passion. What you're good at and what you are paid for may not be what you love. You know what I mean? Like you might be good at working in investments and you might get paid for that. It could be your profession, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's part of your purpose. If what you can be paid for is also what the world needs, that's like a vocation, it's like a calling. And if the world needs something that you love and that you're good at and you can be paid for it, and you've got all four of those things in alignment with each other, then that's what they call ikigai, which is this total alignment of your values, priorities with your profession and everything like that in life. I think it's much more important to try and find some kind of a balance with this rather than to focus on one of the circles far too much, because then what happens? You start to lose the other four. If you focus way too much on what you can be paid for, even if you're good at it, you're going to forget about what you love, or you may not be doing something that the world needs or contributing to society in a meaningful way. And so I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that as far as like, do you feel like you are more aligned now, even though you might not be getting paid as much, but you have something you get paid for, you are doing something that you love, you are also doing something that is benefiting other people in the world, which I would say you are, and also something that you're good at.
Yeah. And I was actually before we started filming, I was saying that I consider my job. I'm like an artistic mercenary. It's like whatever side gig is gonna pay me the most slash be the most fun. That's what I'll go to,
Yeah.
and I'll tell my Amazon delivery job, hey, I can only work this day, and the day that I would normally be working there, for instance, I would typically be working on a Friday, but I got offered to be an actor in this ridiculous murder mystery
Which is so
show
cool.
where I played like a doctor called Dr. Feelgood. Um, and it was a blast. And I'm sitting there and I didn't consider it a work day at all. It
Yeah.
felt like I just had everything off. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I'm actually getting paid for this. That's crazy to me.
So you had a moment there where what you love was lining up with what you're good at. You
Hmm.
were getting paid for it, and the world needed it. Somebody was there to hire you for it. So it was all there.
Entertainment is incredibly undervalued,
Oh, of course.
especially now. People need escapism. People
Yeah.
need to be entertained and to remember how to laugh. And if you can help someone do that, that's way more valuable than people give you credit
Yeah.
for.
It's like people will sit on the couch and watch TV. They will watch a news program on the TV telling them that the arts are not worth anything.
Yep.
Who produced the news program? Who put that shit on the TV? You know what I mean? If you want to be able to sit on your couch and veg out and watch Netflix because there's 800 shows that you could potentially be watching, you need people to create those things.
Yep.
And a lot of people say, well, like, well, I couldn't do that. It's got to be somebody else. Why not me though? Like, why not you? Why can't you do that? If it's something that you love and that you could get better at, even if you're not good at it, something that you could theoretically start getting paid for.
Yep.
And, people say, oh, I have this reason or responsibilities to handle. What if you stop telling yourself I can't? Because for a long time, I thought I couldn't give up the money that I was getting
Yes.
until I did and realized, well, that wasn't really a big deal now, was it? It's like you've lived on less before. And I understand, sometimes you have children, you have a family, you have people who are relying on you.
And I want to call attention to that.
Yeah.
Like, you and I were fortunate enough to be in the positions where we could have made this.
Yes.
Neither of us has kids. Definitely never going to do that. Um, but I'm speaking for myself.
Fair.
And we for the most part, we didn't have super heavy financial obligations. No kids, no student debt.
Right.
We were very fortunate in that way. And because of the jobs we had, we had saved up enough that we could dip into to support that interim time.
Right.
Like before my unemployment kicked in, there was a good 2 months where I had no income. I was very fortunate enough to
Yeah.
have the resources.
And so not everybody will have the resources, which I totally get. But I want you to think about it this way. So yes, we did have a good situation, but we're creating a better situation. And so
Yes.
creating a better situation is always the goal, right? So what did we have to do? We took a little dip before things went upwards.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for example, you do have children as your responsibility or a family member that you're taking care of or something like that where, yes, you need to have a certain amount of money. I totally understand that. I'm not telling people to go without the things that
Yeah,
you need, but at the same time, let's say, just to use round numbers, you make $50,000 a year at a job that you hate and it's paying the bills for you and your family. So if you continue with that job for 10 years, what are you going to get? 10% raises, $500, $1,000 a year. Right. Yeah. If that 10% as a raise over year is like unheard of now. I think I was giving out like 2% at one point when I was managing people. It was soul crushing. All right. So you can make 50,000 plus 2%. And at the end of 10 years, you might be making 55,000 or 60,000.
And inflation doesn't stop.
No. So let's say for 1 second, though, that for 1 year, you took a job that was what you loved, but only paid 30,000. And then you figured out a way through either a second job, side hustle, whatever you had to do to make up whatever money you needed to. Let's say you had to live on 40,000 for a year. What if that break that you took from working a terrible job that you hate and going into something that you love and will progress and will get better at, if you start at 50, you leave that job, yes, you take a lower dip for a year. But what if the next year, now you've got a ton of acting gigs, maybe you make 60 the next year. Maybe the year after you get a recurring thing on the local news channel as their whatever, and now you're making 70, now you're making 80. So the idea is that you could go 50 and make it slightly up to 60, or you can take a hit for 1 year, get by, and then you're on a shot upward trajectory that's
Mhm.
going to land you higher than you would have been.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
a
not only about the money part of it, but like if you're making the same and have the potential to make more, but you're liking it more, you will naturally throw yourself into that more. You're going to start improving. You're going to do better. And if you really dedicate your time to something that you love, you can eventually find ways to make money with it. So you can either go slightly up or stay flat, or you can take a dip and then shoot yourself much higher and further than you would have gone before.
Yeah, and it's this misconception that, job success, that even things in terms of mental illness, that recovery is this linear path that will just go up, and that's
Yes.
not the way anything in life works.
No.
You and I know the stock market.
Yes.
It'll dip
Up
and
and
then it'll
down.
come
Yeah.
right back up and then it'll dip. That's what happens.
Yeah.
It's, having the willpower to kind of weather that storm. If we go back to, that diagram, do I believe that it's possible to achieve true balance of all of this? Avatar style, all the nations living in harmony.
Maybe not all at the same time.
No, personally, in the society that we live in, especially in the country that we're in, I don't necessarily think that it is possible to achieve perfect balance. But shooting for as close to it as you can get
Yeah.
is what we should do.
I totally agree. And I'm thinking like if what you can be paid for is taking up so much of your time, energy, and mental effort that you can't do what you love, then wouldn't it be worth it to find something that you can be paid for that you don't have to care as much about? Like
Yeah, yeah.
my job right now that I have, I love it. And if it paid a little bit more, I might stay here forever and ever and ever and not try to, go out. But I have other plans for the world. But, you know, if you can at least find a job that doesn't actively take away from what you're doing,
Mhm.
if you can find a way of doing these things to where your main focus can be the things that you love, that you're good at, the world needs. You really want to be able to enjoy your life. I am not in any way, shape, or form interested in waiting until I'm 70 to finally enjoy my life. I want to live my life now and enjoy it and be able to get by with what I need rather than just to focus so much on one part of this, what I could be paid for,
Yes.
And it's about finding the right balance for you. I don't know if we'll ever find perfect harmony.
And, that's like the delivery job. Am
Yeah.
I passionate about slinging packages?
No.
I don't know if anyone except Cliff Clavin from Cheers is.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't. But it's not a bad gig. I mean,
Yeah.
they're long hours, but, you work I'll work 1 to 5 days a week, whatever I feel like working, whatever I can work, I'll do. And so the hours vary, but and the weather,
Yeah.
the route, a lot of different factors. Not every day is the same. Some days I'll be done at 5, some days I'll be done at 8. It varies.
Yeah.
But I like physical work.
Yeah.
I like getting physical. I think about it like I'm getting paid to work out. Cool. And you put in 10 to 12 miles a day. It's hard work. So it goes by fast. I like driving. It's nice to be outside,
Yeah.
even when it is 10 degrees out.
Yeah.
My seasonal depression wasn't as bad because I go outside and I'm in the daylight
Yeah.
the entire time. I'm not in an office from the sun coming up and then when I leave, the sun's down.
Yeah.
In the winter, I mean. And I was the other night because my feet were like killing me coming
Right.
back. And I'm like working on the calluses that are on there. And I'm just like, and I'm talking to my fiance. I'm like, well, my feet might be dead, but my soul's coming back to life.
Yeah.
And, it's not a job that I come back home from. And I'm like, oh, I'm so worried about tomorrow. Oh, my God, I don't know if I'm going to make the sales numbers.
I know. Yeah.
No, it's a job I can leave at
Yeah.
the job.
My job, I am but a cog in the machine. I go in, I do what I have to do, I leave, and I genuinely don't think about it very much from when I leave until I get there. And that's cool. That's good enough for me. You have to think about, are you willing to take the short-term pain to live with the long-term gain?
Back
Or
to finance.
yeah, exactly. Are you so worried about taking that short-term hit that you're willing to be in pain forever for the rest of your life? The short-term gain is, satiating whatever, need you have to feel like you're important, maybe. Maybe it is money. Maybe it is maybe you are a good financial advisor, unlike Cassidy and I. Maybe you do really well and you make money helping people with their finances and you absolutely love it. And that's great. People need to do that. But people with ADHD think very differently than the kind of people who are successful in those types of jobs.
Anything with strict regulations, with
Yeah.
this is the one way to do this.
Yeah.
And, obviously with finance, there's a lot of laws and a lot of
Yeah.
things that you really, if you try to go around that, it's no, 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 no.
Yes. You're SOL.
Um, and yeah, people with ADHD don't, our thought process isn't just a straight line.
Right.
It's zigzags. It's all
It's
over the
very
place.
different. Yeah.
And with that, yeah, those very logical, cerebral jobs are difficult. And that's not to say everyone with ADHD is a creative type,
Right.
but their thought processes, even if it's about, electrical work,
Right.
or if it's about finance, if it's about accounting, you know, the way that you think about it is creative.
Yeah. And it takes a different path for sure. And so for me, I had a tough time and it took a lot before I really got to the point where I was comfortable putting myself out there as a person on social media. But I decided that what I wanted for my life in the long term looked a lot different than where things were heading. I did not want to just be in the position of having to deliver messages that I didn't believe in as a manager, to do a job that I didn't like doing, to work with people that were not easy to work with, all for the sake of having to sit there and tell these people with a $500,000 in the bank that they don't have enough money to retire. And it was killing me. So I was constantly stressed. And I decided that it was worthwhile for me to take a hit, to take some pain in the short term in order to turn my life into something that was going to make me happier in the long run. And I think that everybody has to figure out what that really means for them. I don't think it's the
Yeah.
same thing for
And
everybody.
we are not saying, jump ship before you ship. Oop, that's a different sentence. That you should jump ship before you have a semblance of a plan.
Yeah.
You got to
Even though
figure
the name
out.
of the show is Fuck the Plan.
Yeah, a semblance of a
A
plan, not a
semblance
full
of a
plan.
plan, yeah.
You have to define success, and you have to have some sort of idea about what a successful life means to
Yeah.
you, what would make your life, your path better,
Yeah.
before you start making all these
Yeah.
changes.
And I think by fuck the plan, it's not so much that I mean you shouldn't have a plan in general, but it comes back to an old cliche that I've heard is that don't spend more time making a mistake just because you've already spent a lot of time making it. Don't stick with something that's not right just because you've already been doing it wrong. It's like, well, doing it wrong more isn't going to fix the situation.
No.
Doing the wrong thing isn't going to help. Just doing it harder, like doing it with more emphasis, like it's not going to actually do anything.
I'm
for
gonna
you.
be wrong, but my God, will I be confident about
It's
it?
going
Yeah.
to be worse. I promise you, it's going to get worse and worse. It's not going to get better. So you can even if it doesn't seem like it's possible, try and ask yourself the question of, in a perfect world, if it were possible, what would it look like? Just imagine for 1 minute if you could do exactly what you wanted to do with your life. Forget about money, forget about paying your bills. Think about what you would be happiest doing for however many hours you want to feel like working in a day, 8 hours, 12, 24. What would make you happy? And if there's a way that you could reverse engineer that and walk it back to where you are now and draw a path in between those two, that's the path you need to be on. Not the one leading somewhere that would make your parents happy or would make your spouse happy or would make your high school teachers or your college professors happy. You want to take a path to what's going to make you happy because at the end of the day, you're the one who's responsible for you. You got to look out for yourself.
And you're the one who knows you the best. You're the only one who can say what'll make you happy.
I think that is a very good point. I can't tell you what is going to make you happy. You can't tell me what's going to make me happy. So, if we can all just figure out what we're working towards and make a commitment to take small steps towards that every day. You're not going to change things overnight, but take those small steps. That's the first step towards forgetting the plan that somebody else made for you and working on the plan that is going to be ultimately your design that's going to make you happy at the end of the day. I'm Aaron.
I'm Cass.
And this has been Fuck the Plan, the ADHD Project podcast.